Is Tableau dead? It's been a really hot topic people have been talking about on LinkedIn. I've had lots of conversations with people about it.
Yep. So first to set the mood for the conversation of is Tableau dead? I have some video clips to show you. So this first video clip represents Tableau developers when Salesforce first bought Tableau.
Well, it might not be that bad.
No.
Actually, it might be kind of nice.
Yeah.
And this is them now.
You're horrible. You're an irredeemable monster.
Oh, what took you so long, idiot?
There we go. So that's the question. What's going on? Why is there so much buzz about Tableau being dead? People talk. Why are people, whether or not it's true or not, why are some people saying so? You know?
Exactly. And so that's what we're going to dive into now. So let me just go ahead and prepared a little bit of this for you. So the first answer, is Tableau dead, is like, no, dummy. No. Tableau is obviously not dead. And so a couple pieces of evidence for that. I mean, first of all, you see the numbers on the left there. That's information that Salesforce released. So what that is, Salesforce doesn't run on a yearly fiscal, okay? So that Q1 2023 is actually over the summer of 2022. But you see Tableau revenue is going up. So that's the first sign, like, not dead, right? A dead tool, its revenue is going down. And then on the right, you got Gartner, puts Tableau kind of, firmly in the number 2 position as far as BI tools are concerned. So again, evidence that the tool is not dead. Going as strong as ever, some might say. Now, the flip side of that is Tableau is so dead.
Yep.
And this conversation really started with the Tableau layoff that we saw at the beginning of the year. Salesforce did a big headcount reduction, but then you started seeing all this talk about it hit a couple divisions especially hard, and Tableau and Slack were the two that I saw the most. This is a thing that we've kind of seen before if you've been following this space at all, right? And that's something we're going to talk about too over the course of this presentation. My favorite part of this is actually the Tableau has been killed by Salesforce. Past and current Tableau employees gather at Irish Wake. That is so perfect and like so fits with the kind of the vibe of the Tableau community that they would go to that length. One thing about Tableau people is they love Tableau. There's no doubt about that.
Yep. Here, Ryan, I've got a question from a user for you.
Yeah. How many users to consider dead?
Yeah, we're people call it dead, but I mean,
yeah.
When will it be dead?
When will it be dead? Well, that's kind of what we've got here. Like, what does dead actually mean, right? And it doesn't mean that there are no users. And it doesn't mean like, oh, you need to install this piece of software tomorrow. It's junk. It's not useful, right? People are going to start ripping it out. You take a look at the history of BI, okay? And Tableau is not the first BI tool. I know that there are people, kind of modern data stack people working in startups for whom Tableau represents this ancient dinosaur that has been around forever. But there were whole generations of BI that came before Tableau, right? Cognos, for example, which is where both of us started our career. Cognos and IBM still has like 10,000 customers using Cognos.
Yeah,
and
if you're a Cognos developer, it's been dead. If you go on LinkedIn, it's been dead for 12 years. Right?
Exactly.
And there are people who have just, their entire career has been Cognos, and it probably will continue to be.
Right. And they're still going strong. I know a lot of people in the Cognos community who are like really successful Cognos developers, consultants, and they've been using, little do they know, they've been making great money on a dead tool for a decade, right? So it's not really what it means. What it means is that it's no longer kind of at the forefront of innovation, right? And there's this vibe that, something new is coming. There's a dissatisfaction growing with it. And it's not just Tableau, it's kind of the Tableau way, which we're gonna talk about here. It also means that, and we really saw this a lot with the Cognos acquisition, is kind of this loss of an independent identity over time. So I mean, like, for example, Cognos had its own huge conference when it was an independent tool in Vegas that thousands of people would go to, and it had a huge hyped up community of people who really loved Cognos. And then after the IBM acquisition, that conference ceases to be an independent conference. It gets rolled into IBM conferences. And then, like the last time you went to a big IBM conference, what was Cognos' presence there, Eric?
I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to look for it to find. It was like a treasure hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
You had to know. You had to recognize someone, know who to ask. It's like a secret password. It's like Cognos for analytics.
Yeah, exactly. It was just another booth on the floor,
Yeah.
And so that sort of thing. And then the roadmap, of course, Salesforce has these needs that are different from the independent analytics community. And so, over time, Tableau, it's just the way business works, right? Like Salesforce has a responsibility to their investors to generate revenue. And that is not going to line up with what the independent analytics community needs outside of the Salesforce community.
Yep. I think Ben just had a good comment saying basically the same things. Like, I think we see this in all industry where established leaders have to answer to existing customers, change, et cetera. They get stuck maintaining their existing market share.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And then someone on LinkedIn says, Cognos is really stalled in the UK, and some legacy customers moving away. Right. But it's been that's a very slow process, right? And so when we say Tableau is dead, what we mean is that you can expect the cognosification of Tableau over the next 10 years, right?
Yep.
In fact, time really, this has kind of, I was a big Battlestar Galactica fan 15 years ago, right? This has all happened before and will happen again, right? And so Tableau displaced a previous wave, and I won't belabor this point, but it's important to note that there was a way of doing things before Tableau, and some of those things are going to be making a comeback, I think, which I'm going to argue here in a little bit. But that wave one of the Cognos and business objects was really about IT control and centralization. And wave two, which was Tableau that came, and Power BI, which came and supplanted it, really focused more on pushing the analytics, what you might say, to the edge, right? But not in like a edge computing sense, but more on kind of to the front end of the stack, where it's not a IT developer building a report like it was in Cognos. It's a data analyst or a business analyst who can do things in Tableau. And that drove innovation for a decade, right? Now, there was a bit like, this is just another piece of evidence. I think this is coming. I think in the next few years, we're going to see this, a shakeup. This is what happened between 2015 and 2016 with the Gartner Magic Quadrant.
And you think we're going to see another Gartner?
Yeah, I do. I think
one year we see the one layout, and the next year it looks a lot different.
Right, and this is just you call it a paradigm shift, a vibe shift, whatever. These things happen, and I think we've got one coming down the pike. I don't think this year.
Yeah,
but
when does the Gartner come out?
It's coming out soon. It should come out soon. It comes out around this time every year, February.
Okay,
March.
so just like with the next months-ish.
In the next
sometime.
month. The Gartner Data and Analytics Conference is in Orlando in March 20th, I think it starts. I would expect it to be out by then. And I will be there, by the way, if you are heading to Gartner, join us. But you can see, this is the vibe shift, right? So I think it's going to happen again. So is Tableau dead? Tableau isn't just a piece of software. That's one thing that I believe, right? And it's a credit to people who love Tableau and the community that company built, is it's a software plus a vibe, And so there are two components of that vibe to me. There's the community that Tableau built, which was open, super inclusive. If you look at the people who make up the Tableau community, before Tableau, BI tools were it was just dudes, right? And let's be honest, it was just dudes. That's who did BI. It was dudes, and Tableau had this
in IT,
yeah, IT dudes, and Tableau had this community that is lots of women, people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, and great events, great community support. Makeover Monday.
It empowered people to, not have to call IT to get something done.
Exactly.
They could Like that was the selling points. It's like one of the main selling points is like you don't have to call IT and submit a ticket and have it, take, I don't know, 2 weeks to 2 years to change something in a chart. You could just do it.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, I had a job one time, this was over a decade ago now, where I showed up, I worked the place almost 4 years. And when I showed up, we had this backlog of data warehouse and BI tasks that were all critical, right? Every single one of them a critical need. When I left 3.5 years later, a lot of those things were still in the backlog. The business still said we urgently need them, and we hadn't been able to deliver them. And that was the number one feature of Tableau. I see Mary's comment, my goal in life is to be both a software and a vibe. So Mary, thank you for joining us. Mary, of course, of the infamous Tech Bros podcast.
So is that after the singularity?
Yes,
when
it is after.
We can both be software and a vibe.
Yeah, when we all upload ourselves, we leave meat space behind. Into
the Microsoft Azure living community.
I'm looking forward to
post-life living community.
The other thing about Tableau, and this is really what I think is driving this change, right, is like what I call the supply chain of analytics. So like, what is that? This is the standard way of doing things, is you got your data source, you pull the data out of that, you put it into cheap-ass storage. So S3, Azure Blob Storage, whatever, right? And then you move it into what I call the barely organized warehouse. So this is a data warehousing tool, but is it organized in facts and DIMS and something that Bill Inman would recognize? Oftentimes, no. It's just a bunch of tables. Sometimes they're relatable. A lot of times they're not.
I mean, a lot of times it is like a one-off table or like a materialized view created perhaps for a single Tableau report,
And that's the thing, most commonly, right? Because what we've pushed analytics to the edge and we're trying to churn out great looking dashboards as quickly as possible. And when I say that, I don't mean it to sound dismissive or pejorative. Like that was a revolution compared to waiting 3.5 years for someone on the BI team to update a single column on a report, okay? But it did create this proliferation of like view, storage, view, dashboard, storage, view, dashboard, storage, view, dashboard for each use case. And this just proliferates and proliferates. And it's like, to date myself, it's like the tribbles in OG Star Trek. If you have one tribble, you've got 1,000. And so this has kind of run aground, I think. When I say Tableau is dead, it's a little provocative. What I really mean is that this way of doing things, we've squeezed all the lemon out of that, or all the juice out of that lemon that we can. Right? And you can see I've listed some of the problems here, but fundamentally it boils down to like, we now have 17 views. They have names like, sales quarterly, by region, for Ryan, V2. And that's powering a critical dashboard. And it is maybe not relatable to other places where you can find those exact same metrics. That's one big problem. The second big problem is metric lock-in. You use Tableau or other tools to do data discovery. It's just so hard to push that back down this supply chain. The supply chain is designed to spit stuff out one way. But if you use in the BI front end, you discover a new metric, and now you want to get that into ML. You want to do some market segmentation, like power some ML to make just in time, to make real time offers to people through your e-commerce app, right? That's really hard to do because it's like a manual data engineering task, and that is also a result of the supply chain of analytics. And so, I think it's time for this to change, and that is fundamentally what
I mean, not that this isn't going to disappear.
No.
Like we're saying, it's like Tableau's not going anywhere.
Right.
If you want to be like Tableau developer now, is the answer uninstall Tableau now and start reading a bunch of books about different stuff? No, you don't have to.
Right.
Tableau's going to be around for a while.
Right. And I see Benjamin's, I think we need VR analytics. Why view the data when you can live it? So let me tell you, Benjamin, I was at this would have been, how long ago was this? I mean, a while. It was before the pandemic, so it's on the other side of that pandemic.
In the before times?
Yeah, on the other side of that time bubble where it could have been last year, it could have been 5 years ago. But I was at an IBM event where there was someone who had actually had this set up where you would put on an Oculus Rift And then there would just be this, it was like this huge chart hovering in front of you. And it was pretty cool in a way. It was almost like staring at the obelisk from 2001. That's how I felt. You know, I was like one of those monkeys. Yeah, BC is before COVID. Exactly.
That's what it feels like.
So
I mean, last time I cut my hair was before COVID. So
yeah, exactly.
Here's a real life marker of time gone.
So this supply chain of analytics, like one thing I'm curious if you're watching this, what your experience is with this. This is there's just this growing sense of frustration with this, and I talk to a lot of kind of data like leaders in the data space, and you know, like there's this feeling that there's so much valuable stuff locked up in the BI layer, and it's just so hard to relate everything together, and it's really become a mess. And that is kind of what I would call the Tableauification of BI. As we swung away from that standardized, IT-driven, we justifiably left that behind, right? Yeah. Now we've gone as far as we can in this direction, and we're starting to see the problems. And that's really, you know, when I say Tableau is dead, it's a combination of two things. It's the end of this era, the supply chain era, and it's the fact that we know the acquisition of Tableau by Salesforce is going to lead to Tableau moving away from the needs of the general analytics market and more towards the needs of Salesforce. That's just naturally what happens. And we've seen it happen before with business objects and Cognos. So what comes next? Like what is it? Well, I've got this metaphor I like to throw around about a tree. And this is a little touchy-feely. I'm kind of a touchy-feely guy in a way. I was a theater major, for those of you who don't know, before I got into this. And so, you know, what's coming next? Like there's something on the horizon. I think we all feel it. Those of us who are really into this space and follow it. And I think that it is kind of this tree metaphor helps describe what I think needs to happen next. And that is a bit of a pendulum swing towards centralization, but not the old school style centralization. This is more about kind of taking a data meshy approach to BI, where what we're going to do is, you know, we're going to have a central team that creates a platform and a central repository where you can find high quality metrics. But it needs to be something that you can, you know, that central team kind of maintains the platform, and then it's given to the departments or domains for them to run at their own speed. And this, the reason I like the tree is one, it kind of organically grows towards the light, right? If we pretend the sun is like BI insight, wisdom, right? The tree grows towards the light, and each branch grows on its own in the direction it needs to in order to get to reach the sun. Okay. But there's still a central trunk that supplies nutrients from the soil up to the leaves, and then the leaves, you know, supply energy back to the rest of the tree. In our metaphor, we've got this central trunk of metrics that give high quality of metrics and platform that kind of give a high quality foundation out to the departments or the domains, and then they can supply back valuable metrics so that our central metrics repository is up to date.
So, like with the tree metaphor, like what does that look like in an actual tool? Like what does that look like?
Yeah,
because you talk about the leaves, right? You talk about the leaves, which right, in this case would be like the Edge, the Tableau, the BI tools.
Exactly, but not just BI tools anymore. But yes,
no, yeah. What does that look like? Like okay, there are insights at the edges. How are those brought back in? You know, is that technologically, business process, you know, just track of stuff.
It's both, right? So it's first of all, no tool is going to be able to give you this, right? Tools need to support it. But this is a vibe shift away from the supply chain mentality, where the most valuable thing is churning out those really pretty dashboards. That is a valuable thing, but it is not the most valuable thing, right? So you need to change your culture and practice. And that's really fundamentally, I think so much of the data conversation right now you see online is like, people have this sense of like, we got to be closer to the business. We got to do something different, but we don't really know what it is yet. And this is my argument for like the metaphor that should guide how we go about changing over the coming years. Okay. So what does it actually look like? It is a cultural shift where you're not just churning stuff out as quickly as possible. Obviously, you need to meet the speed of business, but you also need to have data quality, data discoverability, data observability, things that have gone by the wayside in the supply chain metaphor, because the supply chain is one way, right? The tree is circulatory. It goes up, it comes down.
So then is this trying to kind of a way to try to integrate the BI we've left, the BI of yesteryear and the BI of right now in some way to like get the benefits of both in some way?
It is a coming together of the worlds, right?
Wow.
And the way the tooling can support this is like if I'm on the edge and I'm using a workbook, so right, or I'm building a dashboard, and I use the BI tool to do that market segmentation that I talked about earlier. And then we want to add that to an ML model, or we want to put it into a data app, okay? That the BI tool gives me the ability to push that metric down from the self-service edge, or from the leaf, right, down into the branch and into the trunk of the tree. The tooling should support that.
Built into the tool.
Built into the
Feedback
tool.
built into the tool.
Ideally, right? Because what is it today is like, okay, you do that market segmentation on the front end, and then you call it the data engineers. And you say, like, we got to get this thing into Snowflake, And they have to reverse engineer your logic because it's locked in Tableau. It's hard to get the logic out. And you've got to wait in the data engineering team's queue, which has gotten really long, just like the old school data warehouse and central BI team's queue got really long. Okay?
Time is a flat circle.
Time is a flat circle. Exactly. And so that's what the tooling needs to support fundamentally. That's the circulatory nature of it. LinkedIn Live is horrible. Switching over here. Hey, good to see you, by the way, Matt.
Yeah. So if anyone's on LinkedIn Live and like, I'm not looking at it right now, but if it's choppy and terrible, the YouTube stream is pretty decent. So I've posted the link to that in the comment.
And while you're there, why don't you like and subscribe?
Yes.
And leave a comment.
Yeah.
To help us out.
I think maybe all three of those things. If you like what you see, or if you don't.
Either way.
We take angry comments, same as nice comments.
Commenting on LinkedIn feels weird. Yeah. It's
yeah.
We're using
LinkedIn's evolved in a weird way that I didn't realize until Ryan pointed all this stuff out to me. I'm like, what? I thought that was just like the place you dump your resume.
No, it's its whole thing now.
The whole thing.
Yes.
Whole thing.
Yeah, so that's really like when I say Tableau, right? This is the change that I see coming. Is the tooling, and that's a great question, Eric. I think the tooling needs to support this process so that there's governance around it. So it's not just willy-nilly pushing down metrics into the centralized metrics store, but that there's a path from the front end into the metrics store. So we have a question here. Looking for BI roles. It seems like Looker is on the upswing. What do you think? Looker's in an interesting place, I think. It's weird because I think Looker, like, there's kind of two places where Looker, I see it, right? It gets used a lot kind of in the startup world. And I think in the startup world, there's a lot of heartburn about Looker as it, becomes more and more googly. And, the same thing when we talk about what's going to happen to Tableau and what happened to Cognos, right? I mean, it's going to happen to Looker too, right? We're just kind of using the conversation around Tableau to highlight this, okay? But I do think that, there are a lot of companies that adopted Looker over the years that are now scaling up and growing, and Looker's very entrenched there for the same reasons that Tableau's very entrenched. And ripping out Tableau is going to be very, very hard, right? So I do think, Looker is a useful skill to have. I don't expect Looker to become the next big BI tool, right? I think it kind of is what it is, to be honest with you. I think there are some people doing some very interesting things right now in the kind of BI tooling space that you'll see kind of two lanes. One is like people who are trying to build big BI tools to build the data tree that you see here. And what do those have? They have open headless metrics layers. They're composable, which I realize I think is a term that BI people don't know, but you should learn it. What it really means is that the BI tool is made of Lego bricks and that you can take the pieces you need and assemble them for various uses, right? It's code-based and API-based so that you can integrate pieces of BI easily into other apps or into ML, and you can integrate apps and ML into BI because it's got React libraries and Python libraries and all this sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
That's like the big BI that people are working on. And then there's some very cool, how can we evolve that, what traditionally was a Tableau experience? So that's the analyst experience. And for there, obviously I'm a big fan of Count. For those of you who don't know, I used to work at Count. I love Count. The data canvas is an amazing idea. There's a lot of people doing notebooks, so trying to take the Jupyter notebook and BI-ify it. Hyperquery is one of them that I like. And so, that's really where there's kind of two lanes of interesting evolution. And I think you're going to see winners emerge from those two lanes in the coming years.
Yeah.
People moving away from vendor lock-in. Exactly. And that is where kind of the headless layer, when I talk about kind of the headless, right. Yeah. I see Maddie's comment here, right? Going headless. I mean, that's exactly it. That's the purpose of the headless layer. Now, of course, are you just pushing the vendor lock-in? Like, are you just moving it to the left?
Are you moving it to to whatever your metadata layer is? Is that your vendor lock-in?
Yeah, I mean, will be an element of that, right? But you'll have a lot more flexibility, I think. And the other thing about it is a lot of these, there's going to be an interesting dance with open source in this area and that sort of thing. Moving it internally to your dev team. Yeah, exactly, Matt.
Time is a flat circle.
I know, it really is. I see Rita here asks, is Cognos dead for sure? Do you think it can still be around? So, I don't want to say anything bad about Cognos. I love Cognos, and I always will.
Cognos still does things that better than any other tool can.
So let's talk about that for a second. There is this weird, let me go back here for a second. When we looked at this list, okay, you see, so bullet point 2 under prompts, under Wave 1 BI, prompts and reports. There's this thing that Cognos does that nobody has picked up, and I think it just became very uncool, right? Because this is what Tableau replaced, which was the form factor of the sheet of paper. That's what the Cognos report was, right? It was narrow and tall. It had a header and a footer, and it had a table of numbers on it. And that is actually still a very useful thing. And Tableau and Power BI aren't any good at it. And it became very uncool. And so nobody took up that mantle. And so what I'm interested in, Rita, is Cognos is still the best in the world at that. And I'm curious, is anybody going to try to modernize that experience? Is anybody going to try to give you kind of a modern version of the prompted reporting and bursting experience that Wave 1 of BI, that was its bread and butter? If you wanted to automatically generate 10,000 personalized reports and send them out every Monday morning, it was really pretty easy to do in Cognos, and it's like not easy to do.
And that's an interesting question because the classical report form factor, paginated pages reports. I know QuickSight just added that.
Exactly.
Right? And that's advertisement for a future show. That's one of the things we're going to do a deep dive on when we talk about QuickSight. Is we're going to talk about and when we review tools in general, okay, how good does it copy Tableau? Which isn't a bad thing. Copying Tableau, the visualizations are great. And how good does it integrate new things or integrate old things that are now becoming new again, right? Such as paginated reports. So that'll be part of our review that's coming up.
Exactly. Exactly. And Matt brings up a good point, which is like, well, where's the user need for what we're talking about, right? Because in working at smaller companies, it's not there. And it's not there at smaller companies. Like it straight up doesn't exist. But when you get to really big companies, especially when you start to get to like really big finance orgs, they still do a lot of that. Because like finance people, I find they live and think in terms of tables of numbers, you know? And then the ability to easily generate and slice and dice those tables of numbers is something finance still values. So I see it a lot there. But if you're in the startup space, like you're in like working in, you know, tech firms, I think they really aren't doing a lot of this. But if you look in really a lot of other industries, you do see it. But so really you're right, Matt. Like that is not the companies that I know you're, because we know one another to some degree. Like the places you've worked, that's not how you do things there, right?
Yeah. It's fast and furious, you know.
Exactly, but
quick,
we're
quick
like
dashboards, quick analytics.
Here in the like we live in Michigan, you know, in the Detroit and Lansing area, and like at General Motors, there's still a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah, and I think that's actually like as far as us in the show, like with our history, that's kind of one of our pieces of expertise. Is okay, what do big companies actually want? You know, because we both worked at a consulting company working with big companies. So like we've seen, you know, we've seen the classic everything from I need everything bursted out to, you know, every Monday I need a report, I need this, I need a single source of truth to, you know, can I get this in Excel? You know, so
yeah, right. And I mean that's one thing that like I'm really interested to see going forward too is like what form factors emerge other than the dashboard. There's been this idea it's been floating around. You see it, you know, the endless cycles of people talking about things on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, dashboards are dead. Everything's dead apparently, and
everything's dead. It makes a great title for a live stream. So
it does. I do think that there's they're going to be emerging form factors, right? Like I talked about the data canvas and that sort of thing. But I'm very interested. There's going to be a renaissance of the report, and I've thought this through a little bit. Like, what would make it modern? You know, or is the second coming of reporting just what we call today analytics apps? Is that really the same thing? You log into a screen, you've got a table of numbers, and you've got some filters you can apply and maybe some actions you can take from the analytics tool. Benjamin makes this point, you know, for audit and risk compliance, tabular spreadsheets to check off, to have artifacts left behind.
Oh yeah.
That's one thing. You know, when you talk about kind of the supply chain versus the data tree, one of the advantages of the data tree approach is that you'll have a lot more of that. You'll be able to explain where something came from and why and when, right? The observability and the audit. That in the supply chain world, we really, really lost. And I will tell you as someone who has been on a BI team when we had 2 years in a row, we got hit with SOX audits. The fact that we had a central BI platform with centrally managed metrics, like saved our asses. Because we could go in and really show very easily where the data came from and how it hadn't changed and who had accessed it and when. We had all of that in the BI platform. And in the supply chain world, I don't know how you show that. It's very challenging. Okay, so like what should you do? Well, I mean, if you're a Tableau person and you're watching this in the future and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, should I be worried? No, right? Like you shouldn't be worried. Tableau being dead does not mean your company's going to rip it out tomorrow. Although I will say I have had some conversations with high-level data leaders who are very frustrated with the direction and are starting to think about what else could we do. You know, like that conversation is starting. And when that conversation started with Cognos, eventually it did lead to people leaving Cognos behind. So eventually I would expect that to happen with Tableau, but eventually is a long time.
Yeah.
So you should think about what other skills you can get, right? beyond just Tableau. Not to say that you can't, you'll be able to have a long career doing just Tableau. As we said earlier, we know a lot of people who,
especially if like you use it just on like personal, like your individual data, like you use it as a tool, as someone would use Excel, then I mean, will you have any reasons to stop making the charts you make for your presentations in Tableau? No.
Right.
Will your organization, perhaps their standard reports, no longer be in Tableau? Depending. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and then we got a couple of people talking about Chat GPT and AI. So just real quick on that topic. I mean, my feeling on that is that it is going to have an impact, but I can't. See, there's this thing about BI, right? Like it has to be right, and Chat GPT is so unbelievably convincingly wrong sometimes that could be a big problem, right? And the other thing that I think about when it comes to these AI things is that that supply chain world that we talked about before, where you were doing this stuff. How are you going to train on that? Like, what are you going to point if you have this barely organized warehouse and a ton of metrics locked up in Tableau and that sort of stuff. And then it's like, and then it's like what are you going to point Chat GPT to? When you ask it about a particular metric, where's it going to, there's a lot of work you got to do before you hook these things up. Right. Mm-hmm. But I would have told you before all this Chat GPT nonsense that I just didn't see augmented analytics. I know Gartner's really pushed it, but like I've seen IBM try to do it. I've seen everybody try to do it.
Have we seen like integrate it and like the demo looks great, but you try to do it, then you try to use it and it's just like, oh, well, this is
it
nonsense.
Sucks.
It gave me this like weird network chart for like finance numbers. Like what? And it's like, this isn't anything,
Exactly.
But, I mean, everyone's mind got opened when they saw they actually used Chat GPT for the first time.
Right. And so, I've done a total 180. Now that I've seen what these large language models can do, I do think it's going to have a big impact on analytics. I can't predict what that is going to be yet. So I'm not going to.
I think maybe like first step, maybe it'll for the analyst or like the BI developer, it'll like save them time. So maybe the end user isn't doing it because the end user doesn't have the expertise of the data, right? So they need everything they see to be true. But like in the hands of someone who knows the data or knows what they're doing, they can like get an initial SQL query or initial dashboard or visualization off of a question they ask, and then they can check, okay, use this table, this table, this table. I know those things are right. I just saved 3 hours of doing this manually, you know? And then, or just tweak it. It's a little wrong, then tweak it. Just like you use Chat GPT right now. If you ask it for something, it'll be wrong, but it'll be close enough that if you know what you're doing, you can change it or ask it to change it and it'll do it. So I think that's going to be the first step.
Yeah. I mean, prompt hacking for these AI models is going to become its own skill. I mean, it already is, right? It just, as they pervade in different areas. We got some interesting comments here. So I'd like to bring this one up, right? Modern BI tools fail at enterprise management, right? Semantic layer, security, granularity. That is 100% right. And I think that is what's going to be coming back into vogue over this decade, right? Is that we're going to find a way to bring those things back without crushing agility and speed. That's what we have to do because we're at the far end of agility and speed as far as just to pump out a dashboard, right? Where, we've created a problem. The problems that you bring up here, semantics, security, auditability, observability, reuse, the cost of running all these different queries and maintaining all these different tables where each view feeds a dashboard, right? It's not sustainable. We need to do some degree of centralization, but we've got to do it smart, and we can't do it. We can't just go back. Like when people sometimes will hear me say this, and they know I'm a longtime Cognos guy. They'll say, great, Cognos is making a comeback. And I'm like, well, I think there's a new generation of tools that are doing these things in a new way. API-led, analytics as code, composable, right? Headless, all these buzzwords, they do actually mean something. And I think that, that they're all going to have a big impact on BI tooling going forward.
Yep.
What does semantic layer mean? I'm going to write a blog post about this on a Super Data blog. In fact, if you're not familiar with Super Data blog,
In fact, we've already
go ahead and
advertised our
check
YouTube.
Super
Here's
Data
the-
blog out.
Uh-huh.
That's our blog where we talk about these sorts of topics. Superdatablog.substack.com. So just in short, the semantic, you sometimes hear it called the semantic layer or the metrics layer. I think they don't necessarily mean the same thing, but as far as kind of the BI conversation today, I've kind of been using them interchangeably, and a lot of people do. What it really is it's a single place where you are storing validated, high quality metrics that you can combine on the fly to do analysis. That's how I boil it down. So there's no data engineering required for you to look at sales and then, look at it, sales, and then look at it by region, and then change the time grain by year, by quarter, by month, right? Because the data and how it relates, all the key metrics and how they relate to one another and to the items that describe them has already been mapped out.
Yeah.
And so you can point a BI tool to it and consume that mapping graph, if you will. I know there's if you start talking about semantics, you start getting into like the graph theory people. They're a little smarter than me, I think. But that's what it means in the case of BI. And so
it's basically the alternative to as we were talking about earlier, the classic Tableau way is here's a view or a materialized view in the data warehouse that you had a DBA make for you, and then you just report off of that, right? Instead, it's like the semantic layer is like some modeling, like you do some modeling ahead of time. You point the reporting tool to that, take the elements you want, and then it'll automatically have the components you want. It makes it easier to change and more dynamic and more reusable.
Like Deepu says here, this is basically it, right? You're combining the data, the metrics with the descriptions of the metrics, what they mean and how they relate to one another, and and the attributes that describe the metrics, all in one place. And then in the context of BI, what it means is that you can point a BI tool, like when we talk about headless metrics layers or headless semantics, it means you can point a BI tool to it and then issue queries to the semantic layer, which will then kind of interpret the query that it gets and pull the data from where it actually exists in a data warehouse or a data lake, and then give you back that answer. So it lets you combine metrics on the fly in ways that where an engineer doesn't have to structure that view for you up front. Yeah, avoiding having 2,500 views for 2,500 Tableau dashboards like a former client. 100%. Like this is the good and the bad of the data supply chain, the Tableau way, right? Is that the Tableau way was like, let's get this dashboard out fast. Let's build a table to feed the dashboard. Then let's build another table to feed a different dashboard. Then another table to feed a different dashboard. And that's almost like a sugar high. It's an analytic sugar high. Because and Tableau looks great, right? So you're making awesome looking stuff really fast.
Lickety split.
And then you look back on it 5 years later and you're like, holy shit. What do we do with this mess?
You don't know what tables are being used. You don't know what reports are being used.
You have no idea, and you got thousands of dashboards, and any given dashboard maybe has one useful chart.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah. And so that's really kind of it. We've got this question here, are we really talking about an ERD? Not really, right? I mean, the semantic layer it can be represented using a diagram, basically.
A way to chart it, basically.
Yeah, but it's, your ERD is really like more classically, you're talking about the actual physical tables that exist, and then the logical model that might exist on top of those physical tables. But the semantic layer in a modern implementation, like good data has a great semantic layer at scale. So good data, we talked about earlier those companies that are trying to build all the components of the tree. Good data is an example of one that's doing that. Whereas there are people who are building like points of the tree. So at scale is really focused on building the best metrics and semantic layer possible, right? Rather than the whole BI stack. But yeah, it's not exactly the same, but it's not a dumb question. If you're new to this, right? It's
a whole
not
lot
a
of
dumb question
acronyms.
at all.
Or I guess technically they're initialisms. Anyway.
Yeah. So that's really, to summarize, I think what we just said, because we said a lot of stuff. Tableau is not dead.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, no, the questions were great, by the way. Thank you. Your worry when you're doing a live show and you're planning the live show around interaction is like nobody's going to say anything. So thank you very much for being a very generous and participatory audience. But is Tableau dead? No, it's not dead. And yes, it's dead, right? And so and what we expect to see going forward in the BI market is Tableau is going to become legacy, just like Cognos and Business Objects before them became legacy. That's not a bad thing. It means it's very mature. It has a huge user base, but the Tableau way is going to change, and the vibe around Tableau is going to shift. It's going to get that legacy vibe, over time. It's just not going to have the same heat, right? It's the Tableau conference is going to get rolled up into Salesforce conference, and then it's going to become a smaller and smaller part of it over time. We've seen it happen before. And if you're a Tableau pro, you shouldn't panic. If you're a Tableau consultant, you could probably work the next 15 or 20 years doing Tableau consulting. But there may be a time in 5 or 6 years where you start thinking to yourself, man, should I learn something else? Just like I did with Cognos. Hit a point where I was like, oh boy, am I going to have a job in a few years if I don't learn Tableau? I think if you're a Tableau person and your whole career is Tableau, that maybe you'll be asking yourself that question at some point coming up here. And I'm here to tell you that you'll be fine. You will be fine. Tableau people...
BI skills are incredibly transferable between tools.
Incredibly transferable, So you just need to be smart about it, keep up on the trends, understand what companies are looking for, and you'll be able to walk into a place and say, yeah, I will, Power BI is a great example. Power BI has taken over all sorts of stuff. And so, Power BI is taking market share from Tableau right now. You can go from one to the other easily. About what to learn, I would focus on learning, as far as tooling is concerned. I would make sure that you understand, right? The things I would make sure that you understand as a BI person and prepare yourself for what's coming is I would make sure that your SQL skills are good, okay? And your understanding of databases and data models are good. And then I think that you need to start looking at some more software dev sort of skills, like learning about APIs, right? Learning about data ops and DevOps, because I think that that's the way things are going to evolve. Like the BI team is going to be building a platform for the rest of the org to use. And part of that is going to be, as a BI person, picking up the ability to do analytics as code, right? And once you learn that, these new platforms that are coming online, you'll find that you can build a whole BI environment with pre-built content, pre-built dashboards, pre-built security. You can code the whole thing out. And then all you do is you go and edit some params, and it'll spin up a whole new BI instance for you. Connect to the data, populate the dashboards, build the visualizations, add the security. It'll do the whole thing. You can do it in an afternoon. It's like magic.
Yep. So yeah, I'd say learn the fundamental skills, learn modeling concepts, make sure you've got those good.
Understand Git.
Understand that stuff. And if you had to just if the answer was like if you're thinking like that all sounds nice and I'm doing that, but I just need a tool on my resume to say I do this thing, then I would say probably I'd go for Power BI.
I would too.
Go for Power BI. That's where it's at right now.
Yep.
So if you like do all those things to get yourself ready for the future, but if you just I need tool experience, I need just making a dashboard experience, go for Power BI.
That's what I would do too. Yep. All right. So we are going to wrap things up here. Before we go, I want to talk about what is coming up next. So Super Data Show.
Yeah.
Thank you again for attending today. Coming up next on March 2nd, that's a week from today, same time. We're going to be interviewing Colin Zima. He's the CEO of Omni. Omni is doing some very interesting stuff in this space. When I was talking about doing BI on the edge and then pushing metrics down into a centralized metrics store, that's one of the core components of Omni. It's very interesting. And then on March 9th, we're going to have Ollie Hughes, the CEO of Count. Count is a data canvas. It is a different kind of BI tool. You've never seen anything like it, and I'm really happy to bring it to you and talk to Ollie. He's got a very, very cool perspective.
And I want to add in, even if you don't use these tools, if you don't foresee yourself using these tools, I would still suggest checking it out because the components of these tools is what the future is going to be, right?
Yep.
So even if you're just Power BI person, I'm just using Power BI, the stuff you see presented in these tools, Microsoft is eventually going to see that it's working, and they're going to try to integrate it themselves.
100%.
Right. So it's worth it to see these tools because these components are what the future is.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's part of what I'm trying, what we're trying to do here with the interview series is bring in people who are building, we think, the future.
Yes.
So to give you a view of what's coming for BI and analytics. And then on March 16th, I'm super excited for this one. Lauren and Mary joining us. They are the tech bros. So it'll be the tech bros meet the technical brothers.
Yeah. The tech bros, them meeting the data brothers, the literal brothers. So.
The literal data brothers.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen their show, check it out. It is like hot lava. If you're in the modern data stack, kind of emerging data space, awesome takes, really, really prescient, great vision about where how we got to where we are and where we're going. I love the show.
Lays it down like real, like raw, like
yes, yeah, it's real talk.
The first time I tuned in, I'm like, oh yeah, this is good.
It's really good.
This is some real stuff right here.
Yeah, I was overjoyed when they agreed to join us. So I'm super hyped for that. And then we'll have more cool stuff to announce. We're trying to line up great speakers. If you know someone who you think we should talk to, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Reach out to Eric on LinkedIn, or hit us up.
Put your LinkedIn in the comments.
Hit us up here, right? Ryan at superdatabrothers.com.
Yep.
Because we're interested in talking to interesting people. And then the final thing, a plug for us, the Super Data Brothers, right? If you need help navigating this space, you want to figure this out. Where is this going, and how can you get in front of it at your company, at your business? We can make that happen for you. So reach out.
Business resources and technical resources.
100%. Ryan,
his major is in theater. Mine was in IT. So
yeah, we're kind of the talky
combo.
Business guy and the tech guy. All right. So with that,
wait, hold on.
Yep.
One thing, in case anyone watching missed the meme I made.
Oh, you got to show it again. Show the meme.
Show it again. So 2 clips. This first clip is Tableau developers when Salesforce first bought Tableau.
Well, it might not be that bad.
No.
Actually, it might be kind of nice.
Yeah.
And this is them right now. This is the Tableau developers right now.
You're horrible. You're an irredeemable monster.
Oh, what took you so long, idiot?
So there we go. So that to capture how some people are feeling.
Yep.
So.
All right. So
thanks for watching.
Yeah, again, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again next week with Colin Zima from Omni. Take care, everybody.